Coming up on Network Africa. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sworn in for second term in office. The United Nations reaffirms support for Somalia's elections, discussing the next steps in the process. Plus, hundreds of migrants heading for Europe intercepted off the coast of Libya. Hello and welcome to the program this week. I'm Layo Adegoke. Let's begin with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
Thousands of supporters of Tunisian President Kais Saied rallied in the capital and other cities on Sunday to back his suspension of parliament and promises to change the political system, acts his critics call a coup. The demonstration of at least 8,000 people in central Tunis was by far the biggest since Saied seized executive power in July, a show of support by his supporters that dwarfed two protests over the previous 2 weekends against his actions. Thousands of other Saied supporters rallied in Sfax, in Sidi Bouzid, Gefsar and Monastir. Opposition to his moves has also grown in recent weeks as most of the political establishment, the powerful labor union and foreign donors have come out against his suspension of parts of the constitution. Demonstrators waved Tunisian flags and carried placards railing against Ennahda, the moderate Islamist party that is the biggest in parliament and has acted as Saied's main antagonist. Still on Sunday, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari arrived in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa for Monday's inauguration of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for a second 5-year term in office. The president, along with other African leaders, used the opportunity to network on continental issues. The special advisor to the president on media, Mr. Femi Adesina, says it's an opportunity to support the growth of democracy on the continent.
Very significant because this is Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, it's the seat of the African Union. If the president of this country is being inaugurated, it is significant to all African countries. And the fact that it is democracy is another boost for democracy. There's a new trend in Africa now that should not be encouraged. And when African leaders are seen to support the growth and development of democracy, is good for the continent.
Prime Minister Abiy was first appointed Prime Minister in 2018 by the then governing EPRDF coalition following anti-government protests.
Well, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has now been sworn in for a second term in office. The ceremony in the parliament comes after his party won a landslide victory in the elections in June. The vote, which was boycotted by some parties, took place to the background of the conflict in the north. Well, he's expected to form a government, a new government that will be facing its old problems, that's finding a solution to the Tigray crisis. His Prosperity Party's landslide win back in June overshadowed the war in the northern Tigray region, giving Mr. Abiy the next 5 years as Prime Minister. He came to power in 2018 after being nominated by the ruling coalition following years of anti-government protests. He's received praise from international community in 2019 with a Nobel Peace Prize, but now his administration is accused of blocking aid to Tigray. Well, an Ethiopian rebel group has kidnapped at least 145 civilians in the western Benishangul Guzum region following heavy fighting with security forces that has displaced thousands of people. The state-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission said a group calling itself the Guzum People's Democratic Movement abducted the civilians in Sedal Woreda following the clashes. Fighting has been raging between local security forces and the rebels since Sunday. The Commission says the displaced persons will face dire humanitarian challenge unless they are assisted. Benin Shangul, Guzum region, hosts the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and has been blighted by armed attacks in recent years. Well, we have joining us now for more on today's inauguration ceremony in Addis Ababa. Dawit Gelmo is the VOA stringer in Ethiopia, and he joins us now for more details. Hello, Dawit. Good to have you on the program. Talk to us about how today's ceremony played out. You know, the Prime Minister, Abiy, getting his second mandate. All right, it appears we do not have Dawit, but we'll try to reconnect with him. Moving on to other stories away from Ethiopia, a UN delegation made up of some of Somalia's partners is reaffirming the support of the international community for the country's elections and is also discussing, you know, the next steps in the process towards the polls. The delegation is made up of representatives from the African Union Commission, the European Union, Embassy of Norway and Sweden, and they are all led by the UN rep for Somalia, that's Mr. James Swan. Mr. Swan is emphasizing the need for the election of the remaining upper house seats to be completed quickly.
Our discussion with the President and members of his cabinet, we commended Jubaland for being the first federal member state to start holding upper house elections, and emphasized the need for the election of the remaining upper house seats to be completed quickly. This will allow the electoral focus to shift towards the next phase of the federal elections, those for the House of the People. In addition, it is vital to ensure political space is protected for all Somalis. This includes freedom of expression, media access, freedom of organization, and assembly, all to ensure an electoral process that is credible and transparent. This will help ensure political cohesion so that the focus can turn to other critical priorities in the areas of development and security, including the fight against al-Shabaab, which continues to pose a grave threat to peace and stability in Somalia.
Somalia's Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble has described the deportation of Somalis from the self-declared Republic of Somaliland as unfortunate. The authorities in Somaliland deported hundreds of people who are from southern Somalia on Sunday. Now, they were arrested in Las Anod town, with the authorities citing rising insecurity. Prime Minister Roble identified those who had been deported as Somali businessmen, elderly people, women and children. Interior Minister Abdirahman Dabakad says those who had been deported are now being looked after in Puntland. More than 500 migrants attempting to get to Europe were on Sunday intercepted off the Libyan coast as the country continues a massive crackdown on migrants. The migrants were intercepted by the Libyan Coast Guard while on boats believed to be heading to Europe. 500 were cramped in one boat, while a second rubber boat with 50 people was intercepted after its engine failed at sea. The UN Refugee Agency says majority of these people are from Bangladesh, Somalia, Sudan and Syria. It comes just days after one person was killed and dozens injured during a police operation in an area in West Libya popular with asylum seekers and migrants. Thousands of people have been arrested since that operation began. Now, the UN has condemned what it called excessive use of force against the asylum seekers. At least 4,000 migrants have so far been arrested in the sweeping operation, mainly in the Gagaresh area of Tripoli. The North African country, in chaos since its 2011 revolution, is one of the main departure points for migrants, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa, all hoping to reach Europe. United Nations Security Council has unanimously adopted a resolution extending the mandate of the United Nations support mission in Libya until the end of January. The technical rollover resolution was adopted following intense negotiations over restructuring the mission as recommended by the Secretary General's independent strategic review.
It is incumbent upon us to act with the urgency that the Libyan people deserve. Failure to restructure UNSMIL now only serves to undermine our collective efforts to stabilize Libya. We must ask ourselves today, how can we move forward in a manner that places the UN and the people of Libya in a position to build on previous diplomatic achievements?
Согласны с коллегами по Совету в том, что выводы и рекомендации независимого стратегического обзора МОН по миссии, включая идею переформатирования структуры миссии, будет оптимально реализовать по окончанию.
Africa's Environment Minister Barbara Creasy says the spill from a chemical plant attacked by rioters in July in the port city of Durban has caused an environmental disaster. She said it could take several years for the local coastline to recover. Now, giving details of a preliminary investigation, the minister said a criminal case had been opened against the chemical company UPL, which was found not to have obtained environmental permits to run the plant. However, UPL has not admitted liability. Its warehouse was torched during the widespread riots sparked by the prison sentence given to South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma. All restaurants in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, are opting for cocoa fuel operations, a locally produced ethanol, a stove burning that gives out clean cooking fuel, which is both good for the environment and safer to use than traditional wood or kerosene.
In Kenya's capital, Nairobi, restaurant owner Miriam Kamau lifts a steaming ladle of food from a stove burning locally produced ethanol, a fuel made from the byproducts of sugar production. She's one of about 200,000 customers of 3-year-old Kenyan company Cocoa, who've replaced fuel like charcoal, kerosene, and liquefied petroleum gas with locally produced ethanol.
7 years. I have been operating this business for 7 years, and I've actually been using cocoa fuel for 3 years. I think I was among the first people in this area to use it when it came into the market. Since I started using it, I don't even know the price of cooking gas anymore.
Ethanol from agricultural waste helps cut down on greenhouse emissions, partly because consumers won't be using charcoal made from cutting down trees. The United Nations Environmental Programme says sugarcane bioethanol can reduce emissions by 40 to 62% compared to petroleum-derived fuel. Cocoa sells a litre of its biofuel for 77.83 Kenya shillings. The minimum purchase is 30 shillings. A litre of kerosene in Nairobi costs 110.82 shillings. Gas can only be bought in more expensive canisters.
It has really helped me because cooking gas costs me 1,000 Kenya shillings to refill, but with cocoa, I can get even 100 shillings worth of fuel.
Cocoa distributes its fuel using dispensers around Nairobi that allow customers to buy any amount of fuel using mobile money services. The World Health Organization says the potential market is huge. Around 900 people in Africa use dirty fuel for cooking, contributing to air pollution that causes an estimated 500,000 premature deaths on the continent each year. Biofuel can be both economical and environmental friendly, according to Washington, D.C.-based think tank Competitive Enterprise Institute.
Using the waste of the product that was used to make sugar and molasses and so on to create something that I can still reutilize it again and recycle it. So all in a way to try and also meet up with the climatic requirements we have now, the climatic conditions now. We've known we have destroyed quite a bit of our forest coverage and so on and so forth.
Kenya has given ethanol producers using sugar processing waste an exemption from the 16% value-added tax to encourage ethanol production to grow in tandem with the sugar industry, one of the nation's common crops. Cocoa plans to expand to 10 other Kenyan towns in the future.
Still to come on the program. Local leaders in Burkina Faso are honored by the UNHCR's Nasin Refugee Award for Africa for sheltering displaced people. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. The Sudanese government says the country is on the point of running out of essential medicines, fuel and wheat. The cabinet said that while disaffected eastern tribes had some valid grievances, their 2-week blockade of Sudan's main port was harming the whole population. It promised to work on a solution to the economic and political marginalization of eastern Sudan and urged the protesters to join in talks. Sudan was already facing shortages stemming from the economic upheaval caused by the overthrow of President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. Well, Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has ordered the reduction of income tax to preserve purchasing power as the country battles rising food prices. The government is trying to avoid social unrest and has blamed speculation for the increase in prices. The president led a cabinet meeting on Sunday where the soaring food prices was discussed. He is now tightening controls in markets to prevent further increase in prices, and traders found responsible for the hiked food prices will have their licenses withdrawn. A statement from the presidency also says President Tebboune calls for coordination between agriculture and trade ministries to ensure maximum control over agricultural products and legumes. Local media reports that the value of the average salary in Algeria has fallen in recent years. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is warning that South Sudan and Sudan are experiencing severe seasonal flooding with their relief pipelines at the risk of breaking. Almost 500,000 people are affected by flooding along the Nile and Lol rivers and Sudan marshlands so far in 2021. UNOCHA spokesperson Ian Lark says the immediate pipeline breaks are expected in water, sanitation and hygiene supplies, emergency shelter and non-food items in the coming months, if not replenished.
South Sudan, OCHA has received reports of almost 500,000 people affected by flooding along the Nile and Lol rivers and the Sud marshlands so far this year. Jonglei, Unity, Northern Bahr el Ghazal and Upper Nile are the worst affected states. These are also states with a very high proportion of people facing crisis and emergency food insecurity. Access is a major challenge, though, with most of the flood-affected areas inaccessible by road, and the transport of aid by air is very costly. Some of the flood-affected counties are also affected by ongoing violence, which creates significant challenges for the people affected and the humanitarians who try to respond to their needs. Dikes that were repaired in Bor South and Pibor ahead of the floods seem to have helped to protect many areas from flooding since May. However, water levels are now dangerously high in both counties, and many dikes are close to overflowing. If that happens, the impact on people already deemed vulnerable due to previous years of flooding, violence, and food insecurity will be devastating.
Insecurity in the Sahel has forced millions to abandon their homes in recent years. The United Nations is honoring some Burkinabe community leaders who have helped displaced persons fleeing conflict in their homes. Maiga Rukitiao and Mayidige Diambendi are co-winners of the 2021 UNHCR Nasin Refugee Award for Africa for their support, shelter and food that they organize for thousands of people.
He's known locally and affectionately as Elephant Chief. But what's especially large about Diambendi Madiega, some might say, is his heart. He's a traditional chief in Burkina Faso's Bolle. When thousands began arriving in the community, fleeing increasing attacks and insecurity in the country's north, he felt compelled to act.
The concern I had, the problem I saw, was how to take care of the displaced people. That was my concern.
Madiega bought provisions to stave off hunger and opened his large backyard to displaced families. Before long, he was hosting and feeding some 2,500 people, according to the UN's Refugee Agency. It's the reason Madiega is one of the co-winners of the 2021 UNHCR Nansen Refugee Award for Africa. The annual prize honors those who have gone to extraordinary lengths to help forcibly displaced or stateless people.
To get an award for doing this gives me indescribable joy.
Long regarded as a bastion of stability in the Sahel region, Burkina Faso is currently grappling with the world's fastest-growing displacement crisis. Dori is located near Burkina Faso's volatile border with Mali and Niger. The town's population grew by a fifth in just 2 years, with the arrival of 35,000 displaced people. Many turned to Rokiatou Maiga for help. She is the Nansen Award's other winner. The community leader assisted with food, temporary shelter, and practical advice on how to register for assistance from UN agencies and other partners. And she had a particular focus on the needs of women and children.
I know that women's lives are the hardest in the world because women are everything. So for me, if that woman can progress, a country can also progress, as well as the community and even a family.
She established an agricultural cooperative to provide a living for displaced and local women. And the UNHCR says she takes time to sit with new arrivals and hear their stories.
Farmers in Egypt are cultivating land to suit the growth of the silkworm and increase production of silk for local use and decrease exports. Engineer Sameh Fouad and his small-scale business has yielded profit as well as created jobs for young farmers. But more is needed if producers are to meet the country's growing demand.
Engineer Sameh Fouad designated the plot of land in Giza for the cultivation of high-quality mulberry trees known to attract silkworms after a 28-day life cycle, producing silk cocoons that can be harvested and sprung in a week's time.
Silk production is a very profitable business in Egypt and is very easy for young people to do. We offer training courses in order to teach people silk production, and we also offer courses for students at the Facility of Agriculture because it is the most suitable for the process of our project. Not everyone can open a farm and start operating without training first. Our purpose is social but also productive, and if we are able to replicate our model on a national level, then we'll have enough production surplus to export silk.
While Egypt produces around 1.5 tons of natural silk every year, it's only a fragment of what it annually consumes, leaving what researchers say is a gap, often filled by imports. El Katan says that silk-made carpets are the most expensive because they are woven out of silk imported from China. One silk-made carpet can cost up to $572.5 in raw materials before it is dyed, and up to $1,017.7 with other production costs added.
There are projects that have begun to make silk and planting mulberries. The problem is that one silk cocoon produces around 3 grams of silk, so you'll need hundreds of thousands of cocoons just to make 1 ton. You have to plant a lot of mulberries and raise a lot of silkworms. And the other issue is the process and technologies used for untangling the cocoon. The entire silk industry revolves around this process.
Well, despite a diplomatic row with UAE, the host country of Expo 2020, over COVID protocols, Nigeria has opened its pavilion located in the Opportunity District. In this next report, our correspondent Mayowa Adegoke gives us a first look at the pavilion, which is expected to attract investors and tourists to Nigeria over the next 6 months.
Following Dubai's spectacular launch of Expo 2020 and the 6-month-long exhibition a few days old already, it's now up to participating countries to make the best of the global event. Nigeria's pavilion is located in the Opportunity District and open to the public. Nigerian music fills the air on arrival, while images of different cultural attires are displayed on the walls outside. The roof is covered with art by Victor Eyikamenon. Inside the pavilion, different sections promote opportunities in the creative, agricultural, culture and tourism, sports and tech sectors. From Afrobeat star Fela Anikulapo Kuti to Grammy winner Burna Boy, the success stories of Nigeria's music industry are on display. Screens in the pavilion share information about states and sectors in need of investment. Art is also on display. From the ancient to the contemporary, sculptor Dotun Popo's Inrikpemi is a star attraction. The artist shared via social media that this piece kept him busy during the 2020 pandemic till April 2021. How successful Nigeria's participation in the Expo will be, and if this pavilion will become a hub to attract investment and tourists to the country, is yet to be seen. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television News.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.